Welcome to the deep dive.
Great to be here.
Today, we're jumping back into, well, a really fascinating time in U.S. history, the mid-1930s, right in the thick of the Great Depression.
A pivotal moment for sure.
Yeah, so President Roosevelt, FDR, he launched his New Deal, right, a whole slew of programs trying to pull the country out of this nosedive.
Mm-hmm. An unprecedented response, really.
But, it wasn't all smooth sailing. There was a lot of chatter, quite a bit of criticism about whether it was actually working or if it was the right way to go.
Definitely. People had strong opinions coming from all sorts of different angles.
Exactly. So what we want to do today is dig into those criticisms. What were people actually saying? And crucially, how did all that feedback push Roosevelt towards a second wave of policies around 1935, what we call the Second New Deal?
That's the core question. The initial New Deal brought huge changes, but the criticisms weren't just noise. They actively shaped what came next.
Right. So our mission, if you will, is to connect the dots between the critiques of the first New Deal and the specific shape of the second one.
Let's do it. To really get why the second New Deal happened, you have to understand the pushback against the first round.
Okay, so let's lay out some key ideas that were bouncing around then. First off, deficit spending. Can you break that down simply?
Sure. It's pretty straightforward, really. It just means the government spending more money than it's bringing in through taxes.
So borrowing money to pay for things.
Exactly. Borrowing to fund programs. And the New Deal involved a lot of that. It was quite controversial.
Why so controversial? Seemed like they needed to do something.
Well, yeah, but the traditional thinking, the economic orthodoxy of the day, was all about balanced budgets. You don't spend more than you have.
Ah, okay. Like household budgeting, but for a whole country.
Sort of, yeah. So the idea of the government deliberately going into debt on such a big scale, it seemed reckless to many people. They worried about, piling up national debt.
But the counter-argument was desperation, right?
Desperation. And the idea, pushed by economists like Keynes later on, that government spending was exactly what was needed to jumpstart a stalled economy, to get money circulating again.
So a real clash of ideas there.
A fundamental one. Still echoes today, doesn't it?
It really does. Okay, next big concept. The court packing bill. This sounds dramatic. 1937.
Oh, it's hugely dramatic and controversial. So the background is the Supreme Court had struck down several key New Deal laws, calling them unconstitutional.
Basically blocking Roosevelt's plans.
Right. FDR felt the court was, well, obstructing the path to recovery. His response was this proposal to add more justices to the Supreme Court, up to 6 more.
And the idea was he'd appoint judges who liked his policies.
That was the implication, certainly. He wanted to shift the balance of the court to make it more favorable to the New Deal.
Wow. How did that go down?
Like a lead balloon, honestly.
Yeah.
Even many of his own supporters balked. They saw it as a power grab, messing with the independence of the judiciary, the whole checks and balances thing.
So it wasn't just his opponents who pushed back.
No, it caused a massive uproar across the political spectrum, a real flashpoint over government power.
Okay, so that's the context of government friction. Now let's talk about some specific voices outside the government who are critical. Father Coughlin, he was a priest, right? With a radio show.
A huge radio show. Millions listened. He was a really influential figure. And yeah, initially he actually backed Roosevelt.
But that changed.
It did. He swung pretty hard the other way. Coughlin came to believe the New Deal was too timid, too cozy with banks and big business.
So his criticism wasn't that the government was doing too much, but not enough, or the wrong things.
Exactly. He advocated for much more radical steps, like nationalizing the banks, overhauling the monetary system. He had his own ideas about social justice. He became a very sharp, very vocal critic from the left, in a way.
Interesting. Shows the pressure wasn't all coming from conservatives worried about spending. What about Dr. Townsend? He had a plan too, right?
Yes, Dr. Francis Townsend. He was a physician, and he was deeply concerned about the plight of the elderly, many of whom were destitute.
Understandable during the Depression.
Absolutely. So he proposed the Townsend Plan. Give every American over 60 a pension of $200 a month.
$200? That was a lot of money back then.
A huge amount. The catch was they had to spend it all within the month. The idea was to boost consumption.
And how would it be funded?
Through a national sales tax, which raised a lot of questions among economists about whether it was actually feasible. Could you realistically raise that much money that way?
Probably not easily. But the idea must have been popular.
Immensely popular. Towns and clubs sprang up everywhere. It tapped into a real desperation and put enormous pressure on Roosevelt to do something concrete for older Americans. It highlighted a gap.
A gap the Social Security Act would later try to fill, maybe?
Precisely. Townsend's movement definitely helped create the political will for Social Security.
Okay, and then there was Huey Long, the kingfish from Louisiana, another colorful character.
Oh, absolutely. Governor, then senator. Hugely charismatic populist figure. Like Coughlin, he initially supported FDR, but then became a major rival.
What was his angle?
His big thing was share our wealth. He argued the New Deal just tinkered around the edges. It didn't tackle the fundamental problem as he saw it, the massive concentration of wealth in the hands of a few.
So redistribution.
Big time. His plan called for capping personal fortunes, confiscating wealth over a certain limit through heavy taxes, and using that money to guarantee every family a minimum income and a homestead.
Wow, that's radical, even compared to Coughlin.
It was, and incredibly popular, especially in the South and parts of the Midwest. Long was seen as a genuine potential challenger to Roosevelt for the presidency before his assassination in 1935.
So Roosevelt's facing heat from conservatives worried about debt, the Supreme Court blocking his laws, and these really popular figures saying he's not going nearly far enough.
You got it. It was a political minefield. And all this pressure, this whole mix of criticisms, is the backdrop for the Second New Deal emerging in 35.
Okay, let's pivot to that. The Second New Deal. What were some key pieces? The WPA Works Progress Administration. What was that about?
Right, the WPA. This was about direct job creation on a massive scale. The thinking was, okay, unemployment is still sky high. Let's put people to work directly on government projects.
What kind of projects?
All sorts. Building roads, bridges, schools, parks, airports. Lots of infrastructure we still use today.
But it was broader than that, too.
How so?
It famously employed artists, writers, musicians, actors through programs like the Federal Theater Project and the Federal Writers Project, documenting American life, creating public art. It was about jobs, yes, but also boosting morale and culture.
A really direct answer to the unemployment crisis, then.
Very direct. Employed millions over its lifetime.
Okay, another big one, the Wagner Act. You mentioned it earlier, National Labor Relations Act, 1935. Why was this so important?
It was monumental for labor unions. Before the Wagner Act, employers could, and often did, aggressively fight unionization, firing workers refusing to bargain.
So the Wagner Act changed that.
Fundamentally, it guaranteed workers the legal right to organize, to form unions, and crucially, to bargain collectively with their employers. Bargain over wages, hours.
Exactly. Wages, hours, working conditions. It also created the National Labor Relations Board, the NLRB, to oversee union elections and prevent unfair labor practices by employers. It really tilted the balance of power towards labor.
A direct response, maybe, to some of the criticisms that the initial New Deal wasn't doing enough for workers?
You could definitely see it that way. It empowered a key constituency that felt overlooked by some earlier efforts.
Okay, and then minimum wage comes along a bit later, 38, under the Fair Labor Standards Act, but often seen as part of this era.
Right. It established the first national minimum wage. 40 cents an hour initially, I think.
Something like that. What was the goal there?
To put a floor under wages. To stop employers from paying exploitative, rock-bottom wages. It also set maximum hours of the work week and tackled child labor. Basic protections.
Setting a baseline standard.
Exactly. Protecting the most vulnerable workers.
And finally, the big one. Maybe the most lasting legacy. The Social Security Act of 1935.
Arguably, yes. This was groundbreaking. It created the system we essentially still have today.
What were its main parts?
3 main pillars, really. First, old age insurance retirement benefits funded by payroll taxes on workers and employers.
The pensions Townsend was calling for, but maybe more sustainable?
In a way, yes. A more structured, insurance-based approach. Second, it set up a federal-state system of unemployment insurance. Some income support if you lost your job.
Okay.
And third, it provided federal funds to help states provide aid to dependent children and people with disabilities.
So a safety net.
A foundational social safety net. It marked a huge shift, acknowledging a government responsibility for citizen welfare in a way that hadn't existed before on that scale.
Wow. Okay, so pulling it all together, this Second New Deal really does look like a response to all that criticism we talked about.
It absolutely does. You see the concerns about debt on the right, maybe less addressed directly, but the populist pressure was clearly influential.
Like Coughlin and Long saying, not enough.
Right. And Dr. Townsend highlighting the needs of the elderly. The WPA tackled unemployment head-on. Wagner Act empowered labor. Social Security created that safety net. It was a move towards more direct government intervention.
And dealing with the court challenges, too, though the court packing itself failed.
Yes, although the court did start upholding more New Deal legislation around that time anyway, the famous switch in time that saved nine. But the whole episode showed the tension.
So the Second New Deal wasn't just more of the same. It was an evolution, a shift in strategy, heavily influenced by the critiques and the political realities of the mid-30s.
Precisely. Policy doesn't happen in a vacuum. It's often this messy process of trying things, getting feedback, sometimes loud feedback, and adjusting course.
Well, this has been incredibly clarifying. Thanks for walking us through that complex period.
My pleasure. It's a crucial story to understand.
Absolutely. Before we sign off, we always like to leave our listeners with a few things to chew on.
Good idea. Maybe start with, can you put into your own words, why did people criticize FDR's first round of New Deal policies? What were their main beefs?
And following from that, what were the biggest differences in approach between that first New Deal and the second New Deal that we've been discussing?
How did those radio priests and fiery politicians, like Father Coughlin, Dr. Townsend, and Huey Long, actually manage to influence things? What impact did they have?
Yeah, and can you connect the dots? Which specific programs from the second New Deal, like WPA or Social Security, seem like direct answers to particular criticisms?
And that court packing thing. Why was it such a big deal? What does that whole episode tell us about how power is supposed to work or not work between the president and the Supreme Court?
Really good questions to reflect on. Thanks again for joining us.
Thank you.
And for everyone listening, maybe one final thought. We see here how criticism, even really tough criticism from different sides, shaped a major policy response to a crisis. How might understanding that process, the shift from the first to the second New Deal, help us think about tackling the big challenges we face today? Something to mull over. Thanks for tuning in to The Deep Dive.